This event is being recorded and will be housed on our website, so you will be able to view the recording of this event following this event today. And at the end of this event, there'll be a survey that will pop up on your screens. So I'd be very grateful if at the end of this event, you could just take a few moments out to answer a few simple questions about the event that will just help us improve future events we have in this format. So thank you all for listening to me, and I will now introduce Professor Emma Baker on screen. Hi, Emma.
Afternoon. Okay, so thanks very much, Lanisha, and welcome to everyone, and thank you very much for joining this webinar. I'm going to now share my screen, so hopefully you can see my slides. So hopefully you can now see my slides. I know Lanisha's still there and she'll let me know if there are any problems. So I'm going to talk to you for the next 20 minutes or so about the UK's only BSc in clinical pharmacology here at St George's. And here are some of our current Year 2 students showing off their skills in our COVID testing centre at St George's. My credentials for talking to you today are that I'm the course director of this programme. I'm going to start the talk by explaining what clinical pharmacology is, and then talk about why you might do this degree, what it involves, and also the careers. What doors will the degree open for you? As Lanisha said, please type your questions or any comments to any of my questions in the chat so that we can have some form of interaction. I much prefer it when we're able to do this in a room where we're all together and we can talk to each other, but please try and use the chat as a way to get that kind of discussion going. So first of all, let's think about what is clinical pharmacology and why might this be the subject for you. We've all been through a really terrible time in the last year and a half with the COVID pandemic. I don't know if you'd like to just start by typing into the chat what scientific advances you think are helping to get us out of this pandemic. Who's going to be brave and put the first response in the chat? Go on, you know you want to. It's good for me to know you're out there. While you're thinking, maybe I'll give you a bit of a clue. Has anybody yet been offered a vaccination or had their parents offered a vaccination? Where do you think those have come from? Okay, so the pandemic has been a terrible new disease, this COVID infection. And we haven't, obviously we've then had to self-isolate, be stuck in our bedrooms, interacting on screens like this one. But to get out, when the pandemic first struck in March, we had 2020, we had no medicines to treat people who got the disease, and we had no ways of preventing the disease. So as soon as the pandemic struck, scientists across the world sprung into action and started trying to solve the problem of the pandemic and develop new treatments. So they were testing treatments against the virus in the lab. They were then testing them for the first time in patients, and then potentially going into clinical trials, and then moving the drug all the way through from those trials through regulation. You might have heard of the regulator, MHRA, had to approve our vaccines, and then all the way through into healthcare. So now nearly 50 million people in this country have been vaccinated against COVID. It's an amazing achievement if you think that that was only 18 months ago that we first discovered this disease. So many of these scientific advances really sum up what clinical pharmacology is. Clinical pharmacology is all about developing new drugs and vaccines and medicines for the use in healthcare. So it's an incredibly exciting field, and there's never been a better time to go into this field, because, if you like, the pandemic has woken us up to be aware that there may be many more diseases out there that we could treat better, and how important it is for us to develop new medicines. This little circle here tries to describe what is included in clinical pharmacology. So it's partly about understanding diseases and how they're caused. So why do people get ill with COVID? It's the coronavirus. How does the coronavirus interact with the lung tissue to cause illness and the rest of the body? And then understanding the disease mechanism allows us then to try and discover drugs that might be active against the disease. For example, from our existing portfolio of drugs, by making new drugs, antibodies, new vaccines, etc. And once drugs have been discovered that might work against the disease, they're tested in the lab, maybe in cells, sometimes in animals. And once we know that they are going to be potentially worth testing in people, imagine that moment when a new drug or vaccine is put for the very first time into a person. How scary is that? Nobody's ever had it before. But also how exciting will it work? Once a few people have had it and we know it's safe, then we can start to give it to more patients and start to test it properly against a dummy, which is called a placebo. And these experiments are called clinical trials. And when drugs are proven to work, they then have to be approved by a regulator who keeps an eye on making sure all the experiments have been done properly. And then finally, we can prescribe it for patients. And once we start treating patients, we find out more about the drugs. And sometimes this then leads to the next question. And so it goes on in this circle. So clinical pharmacology is the incredibly exciting field of developing new medicines for use in healthcare. And this has never been exemplified more than now with the rapid development of vaccines and drugs for COVID. But it's not all about COVID. You might be wondering where it fits in a range of possible careers that are opening up for you as somebody interested in science. So here are some potential university applicants at the beginning of their journey. Where could they go? Well, with science A-levels, you might want to go into healthcare, and you might want to go into a more scientific field. And clinical pharmacology, if you like, sits somewhere in the middle. I've just put on the bottom here a few areas that you might study that relate to the use of medicines. So pharmacology, there are 26 pharmacology degrees out there in the UK, and that is the science of drugs. It's mostly about laboratory science, what drugs are, their molecules, their chemistry, how they work, etc. Some pharmacology degrees are more applied than others, and our pharmacology degree is the most applied. It's clinical pharmacology. So it's all about drugs in humans. And in our degree, we have some lab stuff and some science in our degree, but we focus much more on the people end. So on the drug development and clinical trials, and on using drugs in healthcare. But these are science degrees, and when you've qualified with these, or when you graduate from these degrees, you have a number of possible research career tracks, which I'll tell you about in a minute, but they don't qualify you for working with patients. If you want to work with patients, you need to do a healthcare degree. And a lot of people ask me, what's the difference between clinical pharmacology and pharmacy? Clinical pharmacology is about research and science and developing medicines and applying them to the use in healthcare, whereas pharmacy is a profession which is involved in the procurement, the dispensing, and the safe and effective use of medicines. So pharmacists might work in a community pharmacy. You've been into Boots and got a prescription. They might work in a GP practice, reviewing medicines for patients. They might work in a hospital. So they work in a healthcare environment, and they are using medicines they're making sure that patients are getting the right medicines, as opposed to a clinical pharmacologist who is developing new medicines. So if you want to be more delivery of healthcare, pharmacy might be the job for you. If you want to do more research and development of new medicines, clinical pharmacology might be for you. And I guess, of course, in the middle is medicine, and lots of people with science degrees want to be doctors. And of course, that is a fantastic career, and I'm a doctor as well as a clinical pharmacologist. Again, your health care degree qualifies you to work with patients, doctors make a diagnosis, they prescribe medicines. They can go into research, but that's not the primary. That's not where the primary purpose of the degree is, to train you to work with patients. So this spectrum, pharmacology and clinical pharmacology are science degrees, and medicine and pharmacy are healthcare degrees. So I hope that gives you some clarity, and I'm happy to answer more questions. So our BSc in clinical pharmacology aims to get you as the graduate, or get the graduates ready for work or further study in drug development and in healthcare. Now our USP, if you like, is about work readiness, and I'll tell you as I go through the rest of my talk how we have created what I think, and hopefully Maisha will agree, is a really exciting program that actually helps students develop their skills as well as their knowledge, and also links with employers, so that when you graduate with this degree, you have a whole range of career options, including potentially going on to do graduate entry healthcare if you were interested in that and realise that during your degree. So the BSc in clinical pharmacology is a 3-year degree, and there is an option to take a year out between years 2 and 3 and go and work in industry. And I can talk about that a bit more in a minute, but that is not essential. So how does the 3 years of the degree work? In the first, so the degree is divided into semesters, A and B, and so our chunks of learning are by semester. So in the first semester, you are introduced to all the modules and skills that you're going to study during the course, and I'll explain those a bit more in a minute. In the next 2 semesters, if you like, there's a year from the end, for second semester of year 1 to the first semester of year 2, where you learn all about different drug targets and drugs and diseases, and lots of exciting knowledge and skills. You have your exams at the end of the first semester of year 2, and then you have a whole semester of doing a research project and work experience without exams, so you can really focus on developing your work-ready skills. And then when you come back for year 3, you have a semester of hot topics and projects, and then a semester of advanced modules where you now know more what you want to specialize in, and so you can study a topic you're interested in more depth. And you can see on this slide that there are 3 projects: an early project in first year, developing research skills, a practical research project in year 2, and a written research project in year 3. So there's about 17 weeks of project time in our degree altogether, really developing your research skills as well as your knowledge. The main subject modules you'll study are shown on this slide. So you need to understand science. We don't teach you the science and then the pharmacology. We teach you the science you need to know as you go along to understand the pharmacology. So in the first semester, you'll learn cell biology, then you'll learn more organ-specific science as we go along. And alongside the science, you learn the pharmacology shown in green. And there are 2 main parts of pharmacology. You need to know about all the drugs and how they work, but you also need to know all about how your body handles drugs. So when you take a tablet, how do you absorb it? Where does it go in the body? How do you get rid of it from the body? And that's called pharmacokinetics. So you study both of those topics together. And then we get down to the applied bit. So a key part of the course is learning all about how drugs are developed and how you do clinical trials. That might be a career destination for you after your degree, working in pharma. You learn all about how drugs are used in healthcare and prescribed to patients, what diseases they're used for, how healthcare works, what all the different professionals do. And then you learn lots about data and statistics. Don't be scared if you don't like maths. This is a lot about data and what information do we collect and how do we analyze clinical trials and how do we show experiments have worked and that kind of stuff. So those are our main content modules. And you actually you don't study those one at a time, you study them all at once, which sounds very, very confusing. And hopefully Maisha will tell you whether it works or not in a minute. but I've tried to represent this as stripes. So you study the science that you need to know all the way along to understand the other modules, and you build your knowledge of pharmacology and your applied subjects as you go along, but around a specific topic. So in this year 1 semester 2, you learn about the heart and inflammation, infection and metabolism. And in year 2, you learn about the neurology and psychiatry and cancer and conception and pediatrics and geriatrics. And then in year 3, you are able to specialize and get into the topic in more detail. I call this a toothpaste curriculum because it all comes out in stripes, but it coordinates. And when we've talked to employers, what they want from you is the ability for you to think broadly. So we think and hope that this develops a broad understanding of clinical pharmacology. And certainly our current year 1 and year 2 students show this fantastically well. A really exciting part of our course is all the skills that you do. So you have skills sessions every week, and usually alternately clinical trials or laboratory skills. I'll tell you a bit about how we've coped with this in COVID, but we think that this will go ahead as planned next year. Our current first years missed out on some skills, but we put it all together at the end of first year in what we call the Vibrant Festival of Skills. And they had a lot of fun getting into the lab and making sure that they hadn't missed out on any learning and techniques. So clinical trials skills, right in the first month of the course, our students are taking blood pressure and pulse and doing clinical skills and running a little mini clinical trial, but learning all the skills they need to know to work in a clinical trials environment. In the lab, you're learning all about how to do an experiment, to do analysis, to use pipettes, to be accurate, to do dose response curves and calculations. And of course, you are needing to, when you generate data from these experiments, you need to be able to analyze it and understand it. And so alongside your experiments, your data and statistics sessions take the data that you've generated and you analyze it and look at your results. Our students learn loads of presentation skills, and they are brilliant at presenting. Our first years had a presentation symposium last Friday, and the second years this Friday before. And for me, it was like going to a scientific conference of professionals. Right from day 1, you're doing presentations in your hub group, just little stand up and talk, and it feels scary, but your group is really small. And then you have a skills session with an actress halfway through the first semester. And soon you're standing up and talking in front of a small group. And by the end of the first semester, we have a Dragon's Den where our students stand up in their groups and make a pitch for a drug to keep that drug on the NHS. And so presentation is a really important part of work. And we get our students doing it so often that by the end of the course, it feels to them like they're falling off a log. So a really, really important part of our course. And another really important part of our course is the teamwork and the relationship between our students, a strong course ethos of us all working together to develop. And our students collect evidence of all their skills in a portfolio, and I'll show you some of the badges in a minute. This is really important because when our students leave the course, we sign them off with a portfolio that allows them to demonstrate their skills to employers. So the skills happen all the way through the course. I've put dragons in where there are symposia, where you get to practice standing up in front of a large audience. And you can see that the skills go all the way through the 3 years of the course until you get your portfolio signed off with your certificate for employers. We use lots of different methods of teaching and learning. There are 2 small group sessions a week. A hub at the beginning of the week where you do a weekly quiz to keep up with your learning. You work with your colleagues on projects, for example, presentations, data analysis, worksheets, debates, etc. And drug-based learning at the end of the week where you have a scenario from the real world and you apply your knowledge to that scenario. You can see that we do have lectures, and this is a good old days pre-COVID, but hopefully they'll be coming back. Workshops, and I've talked to you about practicals. How have we coped with COVID? Well, we have a very put a lot of work into trying to create online learning that is as good as possible. And so all our course is available to all our students. There's no content was missed during COVID. So we have lots of online learning, including chunked up lectures, videos, podcasts, quizzes, interactive learning, worksheets, etc. And a very usable learning management system called Canvas, which I think is user-friendly, and students seem to find it straightforward once they get to grips with our complicated toothpaste course. And you can see that our course was praised by Michelle Donnellan, who was the Government Minister of State for Universities in August 2020. It's horrible being online, but we have tried to do the best we can. And you can see that the students are still smiling. This was our winner group who won the Dragon's Den. We had to do that online this year. But here you can see our second year students got an opportunity for an unexpected 2 weeks of work experience. So because our course is small, it can flex. If there's a good opportunity out there, we can grab it for you. And here our students were learning to do lateral flow tests in our testing centre, manage it through NHS Test and Trace. You can see that they're all fully trained in PPE and being COVID safe. They also took turns in being the team manager. People who couldn't come on site learned skills of rota management, etc. And so we have coped as best we can with COVID so far. And going forward, when you come, I guess you were possibly hoping to come in 2022, we should be I won't say we'll be fully face-to-face because nobody may ever go back to that post-COVID, but for next year we will definitely be doing 2 days a week on site, 2 days a week self-directed learning. And this is because that's what our students have chosen as the balance. They like to have some of the knowledge delivery as pre-recorded lectures and then come in face-to-face for tutorials, practicals, small group sessions, etc. So that's how it's going to work. How is our course assessed? Well, we have 50% in-course assessment for everything and 50% exams. And you can see that we have exams once a year in first and second year and twice in year 3, and I'll explain why. So in year 1, students have quizzes every week as their in-course assessment with a couple of bigger quizzes. Our principle is to have them before the holidays so you can enjoy your holidays rather than after, so you have to revise for the whole holiday. These quizzes tot up your marks week on week so that you've passed half your course before you get to your end of year exam. So that's how year 1 works. Year 1 is challenging for students coming to university. We don't count year 1 towards what's called the final degree classification. So you may know that your degree will be either classified as a first, a 2-1, a 2-2, a third, or a pass or unclassified. And we don't count the first year marks towards that because it can take students a year to get used to university learning and to settle. So you have to pass year 1, but to get to year 2. But if you don't have a great year, it doesn't matter. As long as you get through, then you start to accumulate marks for your degree. In year 2, half the year is assessed on the modules. So we have in-course assessment and exams for the modules. But then your exams are all over in January or beginning of February. And then you have this whole semester to really focus on your skills, so project and work experience. And your project mark is half of your year 2 mark. In year 2, your modules and project mark counts 30% towards your degree. And then in year 3, we have assessments at the end of this first semester and the end of the second semester, really just so that some of it's got out of the way and you don't have to do a big end of year exam because you're studying different topics in the first and second semester. So we like to get all the assessments out of the way for the first lot of topics before you concentrate on the next lot of topics. And you can see third year is the biggest contributor to your degree. Those of you who heard the student support talk will know that there's loads of support out there for you at St George's, and some of that is from the course team. So here's a picture of many of our course team. You can see a diverse, enthusiastic bunch, all smiling. And we, as a course team, are very functional, and we absolutely love working with our students. And we are act as your personal tutor. You'll see your personal tutor every week in your hub group, because they'll be the same person. You'll also have a different tutor for drug-based learning. You'll get different tutors for projects and work experience, so you'll get to know all of the course team. And of course, we have a course administrator, Errol, who's incredibly approachable, and loads of career support and university support systems for you. So what could you go on to after this degree? I think this degree opens so many doors in terms of what you might do. And in fact, what we've discovered is that our students are now, year 2 students have just finished their work experience. A lot of them have said to me, oh, I know what I want to do, or I don't know what I want to do because there's so much choice. So I find that really exciting, that they can see the world out there. And often when you're at school and getting careers advice, you just don't know of all the millions of things that you can do after this degree. What I would say is that this is a skills gap. There aren't enough people working in this field. And so getting a job that could be well paid, I think, is likely if you work hard and do well. So here's some of the things you could do. So you can go and work in industry, represented that here, from anything from designing trials, being a project manager as a clinical pharmacologist, seeing a drug all the way through from the beginning to its license, something called a pharmacometrician, which is someone who helps work out what the right dose of a drug should be. You could go into marketing and sales for the drugs. You could work in something called a contract research organization, which is the delivery arm of research, coordinating research. You can work, if you want to work with patients, but you don't want to be a healthcare professional, you could become a clinical trials practitioner and work in a clinical trials unit with patients testing new drugs. If you like the lab, if you like data, there are jobs for you in clinical trials delivery, and there are clear career pathways for people working in these areas. You could also do something called regulatory affairs, which is all about making sure medicines research is done safely. You could become a scientist in a university. You could work in some aspects of healthcare. You could do technical services management, but you aren't qualified as a doctor or pharmacist. But you might not be sure you want to do that at this stage, but you might decide during your degree that you do. And this degree will set you up brilliantly for graduate entry healthcare. It teaches you clinical skills, all about the use of medicines, disease and science. And it would really set you up well to get into healthcare if that's what you wanted. Our students, when they arrive, often say they might want to do healthcare later on, but as we go through the degree, more and more of them are finding exciting career pathways in clinical pharmacology in some of these areas that they want to do. You could do a master's, a PhD. I realize I'm running out of time. You could go straight into a job and get some money, or you could do an apprenticeship, which will allow you to do a master's or PhD whilst you're being paid. There's so many options out there. And I'd just like to point out that our degree aims to get people ready for work, and we know what that means because we work with employers. So when we set the degree up, we had a big symposium with employers looking at what makes people employable, and we've done a lot of work on that. And you can see in the margins of this slide all the employers that have recently offered work experience to our students and are partners with us on delivering the degree. And some of those are excited because they see our students as a great product and are starting to set up internships, particularly for our students for professional years. I've run out of time, so I could go on forever. I really could about this degree, but you can see there's lots of careers, employment skills, work experience, opportunities to self-specialize, your portfolio that will make sure you're work ready. And I would say that our students have only been in our degree for a short period, but they are work ready already with all these different things. And these are some of the badges that you can get from our from your skills portfolio. But this summer, Our students have gone off, they've got paid internships or jobs working in GP practices, etc., working in vaccine centres. They're highly desirable students because of all their skills. Some of them are going to research conferences and publishing papers. Some of our students have managed to secure a professional training year, and they've been getting all sorts of recognition and awards of their skills, and they're all COVID trained as well. So they're a fantastic bunch, and hopefully the degree is equipping them for what they want to do in life. I noticed that one of the questions was, how do you get into the course, and is there an interview? So our grades are on the website, and basically there is no interview. Your personal statement is the most important thing. And we have a strapline on our course, which is motivated by curiosity. We're looking for students who are passionate, excited, want to do well, are interested, but you don't have to have a burning career desire to be a pharmacometrician. We just want people who are interested in medicine and science and motivated by curiosity and want to enjoy their degree. So I'm going to hand over to Maisha now. There's lots of ways that you can find out more. Please look at our website. We have a course Twitter account. One of our students has an Instagram blog. Chat with our students on Unitu, which you can access easily through our website here, or have a look on LinkedIn. Most of our students now have LinkedIn profiles, which amazes me. Or email me. I'd love to hear from you, and I'd really like to see you on our degree. I guess it would be 2022. Over to Maisha.
Hi everyone, my name is Maisha Zainab and I am a second year student studying BSc Clinical Pharmacology. This means that this upcoming September I shall be entering final year, which fills me with equal amounts of fear and excitement. I live in East London, and so during my first year before the pandemic started, I commuted to campus every day. I chose to study at St. George's because it's a small healthcare focused university and I didn't think I would be able to have that particular experience elsewhere. So what has been my highlight of studying the course at St. George's? So I think for first year, it was definitely Dragon's Den, which Prof. Baker was talking about earlier. So it was really exciting to be able to work with my hub team and seeing the growth that my friends had made throughout the year. I was also one of 3 students to present a data poster. So it was really allowing me to develop new skills, which I had never done before. I think for second year, so this year, it was definitely being able to help out at the COVID-19 testing center, not only because we learned such great skills and we got to help out the community, but also it was just really cool to be able to see everyone again in person. Some honorable mentions would include my internship, which I will talk more about later, but also the weekly playlists. So the majority of semester 2 of first year also took place at home. And because in semester 2, each week is sort of related around a topic, one of our professors, Professor Greenwood, decided that we would create a playlist for each week. So for example, we had a week on hearts. So it was really funny to see all the different songs and all the different genres that people would recommend to make a playlist, and it was a way that we could all sort of communicate and still be able to be a course together. So what has surprised me most about studying at St. George's? I think this was generally just a surprise about studying at university. So St. George's and the clinical pharmacology course team are super friendly. This may be because it's a really small course, but generally the people are really friendly, and it's allowed me to really grow in confidence and be able to make friends with lots of different types of people. How has teaching changed since the pandemic started? Most obviously, there's been a lot more self-directed learning. So for example, we've had some live lectures, and we've also had some which were pre-recorded. This was also helpful because even though I would say with pre-recorded lectures, it's difficult because sometimes you can't concentrate as well as you would in person in the lecture theatre. And also you can't ask questions in real time, but also because it's pre-recorded, you can sort of pause the video and Google something, or pause the video and take a break before coming back to it. So that was sort of the pros and cons of pre-recorded lectures. The big difference for me was not having access to the library and not having access to books. But because once you are a St. George's student, you can access the St. George's Library online, and you can access all the books that they have in a online format. There are also some books that they don't have the actual hard copy books in the library, which you can access, and they also have all sorts of subscriptions to journals and papers which you can read online. So that was one thing that I really learned, was how to sort of direct my own learning and look at different sources. So not necessarily just being able to ask my lecturers to explain something further, but going on to read a textbook or to read a journal article to facilitate my reading. How have students stayed connected during the pandemic? So we have small group sessions of Hub and DBL twice a week. So during these sessions, because there's only about 10 or 11 students, we usually turn our cameras on, and this will kind of force us to communicate with each other more, force us to focus. I also use Teams to form some study sessions with my friends when it was coming up to exams. It was just nice to be able to work together, to study together. Where has my placement been and what have I learned from this? So I had a 6-week internship at Kyowa Kirin, which is a small Japan-based international pharmaceutical company. And I learned a lot about the pharmaceutical industry that I didn't know before. So for example, I kind of had a very limited view of what the pharmaceutical industry was. And now I kind of know of all the different opportunities that are available to me, especially as a clinical pharmacology student. So I was able to speak to lots of people from different departments, including medical writing, medical affairs, marketing, and others. And it was really interesting to see the different type of people who are doing these jobs, because I could actually see myself fitting into that industry. What has been the most challenging part of the course for me? I think the most challenging part was just generally adapting to studying at university. So there's no specification and there's not sort of a massive bank of exam questions, which is very different to A-levels, because that's how I studied my A-levels. And so there's a lot more focus on independent reading and sort of organizing study sessions to go over your own individual weak spots. And I think I've answered all the questions.
Hi, Maisha. Have you finished? Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for your wonderful insight. I hope you guys have enjoyed the overview from Professor Emma Baker and also hearing from our current student, Maisha. So now we're going to use this time to answer a few of the questions that you guys sent in when you registered. And also, if you have any remaining questions, please do send those through now. Thank you for joining us back on screen, Emma. So we'll kick off with the few questions remaining from those that were sent in with the registrations. Most of those were answered through the course of your talk, but there are just a few left, I guess, for us to just clarify. So the first one, actually, which I'll just quickly tackle, is about mental health nursing. I would say if you want to know about mental health nursing, please find out more about that course from whichever institutions you wish to study that at. We won't be covering that here in this webinar. Thank you. So the next question is, what is a typical studying day like of this course? So maybe Maisha, you can just give us a quick overview of what a typical day is like studying the course, or maybe what a typical week is like, because I guess every day in the week might be a bit different.
Yeah. So in first year, we did generally come in every day of the week, but we also had, I think it was 2 afternoons and 1 morning off. So the course team would try really hard to make sure that we had some free time to study. And it was usually 2 or 3 lectures a day. But some of these would be sort of very scientific lectures where you'd have the opportunity to ask questions at the end, and some of these would be workshops. So for example, when we were studying drugs in healthcare, we would have a lot more discussion and a lot more sort of teamwork and problem solving, so it wasn't all the same thing. For data and stats, we would have about a 2-hour session, and it would be in one of the computer rooms, and it would start with a short lecture, and then we'd also do go off on our own and try to solve some questions that we were given. So it was sort of a mixture of different types of learning.
Excellent, thank you. And then, well, Professor Emma Baker did cover this already, so she confirmed there is no interview for the course. So your offer will be based upon meeting the entry requirements and also your personal statement, okay? So someone asked if there are any additional exams to sit before applying. Yeah, so there are no additional exams before applying. And then a final question from those that were sent in with registrations is, what is the day-to-day life like of a clinical pharmacologist? But I guess that will depend on the, well, I'll leave that for you to answer, Professor Emma Baker.
Yeah, so on our website, there is a careers bit, and in that we've tried to show the different career tracks and the sorts of things those people might do. So it really depends what you do with your career after your Clin Pharm degree. So if, for example, you went to work in a clinical trials unit, your day-to-day might be very person-facing. You might be screening patients, clients on the phone. You might be seeing them face-to-face. You might be taking consent or collecting information or samples or doing tests on people and working a bit like you would work in a healthcare environment. If you were really interested in data, you might be handling and analyzing data and managing systems. So you might be a bit more computer or desk-based. If you were going to be someone interested in designing clinical trials or working in the pharmaceutical industry, if you like, in the more of the sort of nerve center of the trials, as Maisha will tell you from her internship, a lot of it is writing documents, having meetings, doing some research, talking to clients. So I think the great thing about this degree is it can lead to a range of careers that suit a range of different people. So I think you heard from Maisha that she felt she could see herself fitting into the environment in the pharmaceutical industry. Other people might fit more in a contract research organization. About a fifth of our students really love being in the lab, so they might go more down a basic science university or lab science route. So I think the great thing about Clin Pharm is that there isn't a typical day or week, but it can be what you make of it, and there are so many opportunities out there. But I think I'll also hand back to Maisha, because I know she could maybe tell you what a week was like in her internship.
So my internship was really so because Kyowa Kirin is such a small, well, compared to other pharmaceutical industry, a small pharmaceutical company, I was able to talk to lots of different people, and we were also given some tasks to complete. So for example, we were given some competitive intelligence tasks, and this is kind of where I realized that this course has really prepared me for being able to kind of go into any career in this sort of area. So even though I didn't know much about the different things that we were asked to research on, I was able to use the skills that we've been given to carry out the research. Even though I didn't know much about Parkinson's disease, I did know how to go about researching. I did know which resources were reliable, and that allowed me to carry out the research tasks.
Awesome. Thank you both for that. So we have some questions that are coming in. So somebody asked, how many students are taken in for this course every year?
So our numbers are, we have at the moment we have a number of 50. In the first year we had nearly 60 students, and in the second year we didn't, because we've only been going for 2 years. In the second year we had less because of the A-level fiasco, but we aim for 50 students, and that I think is a perfect number, because it's small enough to be for each student to get individual attention and support, and for them to form a really tight-knit group, but it's big enough for there to be lots of variety of people for you to talk to and work with. And in the course we aim for students to be always constantly mixed up into different groups so that you get to work with everybody. I don't know if Maisha would like to comment on what it's like being in a group of what's currently 54 students.
I think it's great. I think it's an amazing experience. I feel like when I was applying to university, I did feel quite scared that I would kind of get lost in the crowd, especially when you look at really big universities or really big courses. And with this small group, I do feel like I know everyone. So in first year, I remember when we were assigned into our hub, and I only knew one other student, and we automatically banded together to do our little research project. And now I feel like I would be completely comfortable speaking to anyone, not only just in that hub, but also in our course, because we've been able to work together and been able to really become close friends.
I think that's brilliant, Maisha, and also I think that's really important for work and for life, because you have to work with all sorts of people once you get into the workplace, and to be so adaptable and able to work with all different types of people is brilliant.
Something else in there.
You're there, still there, Anisha? We lost you.
Hiya, sorry about that. Thank you for that, you guys. So somebody else asked, what are the different types of extra reading or learning resources that could be used to learn more about the course?
Do you mean to learn about it before? Well, I guess you can't clarify, but to learn about it before you come? Or
That's what I assumed from what was written, I guess, beforehand.
maybe I'll let Maisha start by answering, and then I'll see what I can add. What would you read, Maisha, if you were going to find out more about this course?
I suppose I'm not sure if you've read the sort of the page, the web page, so the St. George's specific clinical pharmacology page. There's also I think there are links on that website to other things that have been written by students. So for example, there's some articles about our experience at the COVID-19 testing center. And there is also one of my friends in second year. She does have a Instagram blog where she writes about some of her experiences. So I think being able to see what students have written would have been most helpful for me, being able to see the exact experience that they've had studying this course.
And also, that's really good, Maisha. And also, there's students on UniTube from the Clin Pharm course that you can actually chat to. But if you wanted to, I think Maisha's answer is perfect. But if you wanted to read about things related to Clin Pharm to find out whether you're interested in it or you like the subject, then you could do some research into how the COVID vaccines were developed, for example. You could find out more about what clinical trials are. And the other thing you can do is look at the website of something called the British Pharmacological Society. And that is, so that's the British Pharmacological Society, and that has careers pages all about studying pharmacology, clinical pharmacology, where it can take you in life. So those are some other general suggestions. And also you can email me anytime. I did put my email address on the slides, which I think will be shared with everybody, the webinar link, so you can email me. I'd be delighted to answer any questions.
Awesome. Okay, somebody else asks, is this course competitive, I guess, in terms of applying for the course or getting a place on the course?
Shall I answer that one, Maisha?
Yeah.
So the answer is not yet, in that there are places. For the right person, you would have a very good chance of getting in, but because the course is new, but the course is getting more and more popular. So I think our application numbers, last year, I think we had something like 120 applicants. This year we've had 300. So it's getting more competitive, but if you're the right person, we want you, and don't be put off from applying.
Excellent, thank you. That's all the questions we have at the moment. If you do have any final questions, please do send them in to us now. We still have a few more minutes to respond to those for you. Is there anything either of you would like to add? Maybe any top tips you'd like to give our potential students or applicants?
Maisha, would you like to go first?
I think top tips for just generally choosing a university course or deciding whether you want to go to university would be sort of trying to do as much research as you can. So attending different sort of events just like this one and speaking to different students. I think it would be really interesting also to see what the different courses are doing to help facilitate teaching in like sort of in the pandemic. So how have they adapted to home learning? Because I think this course has sort of really done their best to kind of help us, and some others might not have as much help there. Um, and I think just generally trying to do as much reading as you can. So I remember when I was in year 12, I was fully convinced that I wanted to be a geneticist. So my mum sort of bought me this genetics book, and it was really complicated, and I decided that's not for me at all. So even if it's just sort of deciding which careers are not for you, it's still helpful in kind of giving you more of an idea of what to do in the future.
That's brilliant. I can't think of anything better to say than that, but I would say, I guess what I could focus on a bit is on your application. So I think the first thing to do is be brave and follow what you want to do. That perhaps those are two different or similar things, but if you're doing something that you're really interested in and are passionate about, you'll do well. And so that would be perhaps number one. And number two is people are often very worried about their personal statements and their applications and will they get in anywhere. Universities want you guys, so we do want you. When you're doing your personal statement, I think showing enthusiasm and some interest in the subject is probably the most important thing. It's so difficult to, for example, to get work experience, and for this course to get relevant work experience is really hard. So what we're looking for are generic skills and enthusiasm and motivation, motivated by curiosity. And really good luck. It's a hard time to be young, but there are lots of rewards out there if you go out and get them.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. And thank you to our audience for the questions sent in. Since we do have a few more minutes left, I think what I'll do is I will play you guys one of our pre-recorded kind of campus tours to give you guys a little bit of insight as to what St. George's looks like, since you're unable to come onto the campus at the moment to have one of our campus tours. So I just will first thank you, Professor Emma Baker, for your expert insight. Thank you also, Maisha, for your insight from a student's perspective. And just thank you to our panel of staff that have been responding to questions sent in. Yeah, it's been great. So yeah, that's it from us. If you give me a few seconds, I'll start playing the campus tour for you. And once that's done, that will be the end of the event. So thank you all again for joining us this afternoon. I hope you've had all of your questions answered. And if there are any more queries that you have, please do visit our website or send us an email or directly to Professor Emma Baker. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye. thank you to those of you that are still around. I hope you enjoyed that quick preview of St George's. Again, thank you for joining us this afternoon, and I wish you all a good evening. Goodbye.